Where'd you go? Thank you for the raid. Huh. I know you were casting earlier, though, today. I think you cast the Korean one as well, so I'm just gonna assume that you were a bit tired. Alright. We are into a PvZ between Neeb and Denver. Top right of Pillars of Gold. We got Neeb. And in the bottom left, as the red Zerg, we have a Denver. Alright, so PvZ here. Already starting things off a little spicy. I know Denver doesn't really appreciate having his hatchery blocked, but is trying to take it in stride here. Neeb was making sure that Denver would have to go over all the way to the right to take that hatchery. Definitely an annoyance. And sometimes even point towards very popular strategies. For a time, it was like almost always, if you got the block, you'd go into the Adepted Rush. But to be fair, the 4-gate Adept attack was pretty damn popular anyways. So hard to say if that was actually like the intention, but yeah, it can't help. I really do feel like it's more annoyance than anything else. Like, there are actual numbers that you have to consider when you are talking about the hatchery being taken. Like, literally, because the drones have to move all the way over to the right side to saturate. They are going to have less than ideal mining time, right? Like, that literally happens. But we do typically see things just like as anything. The longer the game goes on, the less those things in the very early game matter as much, so... I don't know. I personally always chalk it up to a severe annoyance. Anyone who's played Zerg that had this happen to him knows that it just is like a... God, stupid. But as far as the actual whole in-depth analysis of how this is going to affect the game, I usually don't bother so much. Stargate opener is what I was kind of anticipating. And with the delayed warp gate, it is one of the more classic ways to do the Stargate opener, too. Get that out as fast as possible. The Adept is also here. Instead of like a Stalker, for instance, which would have shot at least Overlord, 3 times, then Perfect Pillar would be used, so... I think Denver knows that. Has no problem leaving his Overlord here. If it dies, it's gonna die to a Phoenix, not to a Stalker. Adept going in for the Scouts. Gonna run into a Queen. Missed the chance to get the Creep Tumor. It's already pretty done. But then get a very good Scout into the Natural. See that it's actually being built. And a very ideal Scout into the main. Could have shaded in, yeah, I was gonna say, could have shaded in, but also maybe even could have, like, literally tried to run in and shade out, but shading in is gonna be the safer option. So, some of the things you want to see is speed is on the way. It usually is, right? You can maybe even see if they're going for a fast Overlord speed build, if it's moving and grooving, but primarily, are there lings popping out of the eggs, and are they still in gas, and how long have they been in gas? But... it was, I think, just a very recent resaturation of the gas geyser for Denver. As the speed finishes up, he's building Spore Crawlers in time for what he assumes is going to be an Oracle first. It's actually not. It's going to be a Void Ray. Neeb is, subscribing to the House of Void Ray worship. Personally, I'm still on the fence, but I do appreciate it coming back as just an opener. The Void Ray opener that gives you safety against some of the earlier, sillier Roach rushes. And of course, it does provide the job of a Phoenix. It cleans up the Overlords very quickly. And can even sometimes be a trickier opener, too. I mean, we're going to have people go for 1 Void Ray or no Void Rays. You're going to have people go for 1 Void Ray and then actually go for 3 or 4 and try to go for, like, a quick bop on a handful of Queens or a Hatchet that's not being paid attention to. That can't happen, but this is a very safe opener. With the Void Ray being just a little less expensive, it's still not as, cheap as a Phoenix, but its utility is a little bit more. Oracle gets a little bit injured, but is otherwise okay. It's going to want to track these Lings and also help out potentially back at home. The Void Ray does help out against the Lings, where again the Phoenix absolutely would not at all help out against the Lings, but dealing with Ling Flood isn't exactly the Void Ray's job. It's better off dealing with those roaches that are coming along. It does help with these tiny little run-bys. Denver just droning up back here. I mean, the longer this game goes, I actually feel pretty good for Denver. I think one of his biggest weaknesses is being tripped up in the mid-game. So I would expect Neeb to actually be kind of a comfortable player for him to go up against. But of course, this is because Neeb is a macro player as well. Like, he is going to be known a lot for his strong 3-base pushes, not 2-base all-ins, or even his very, very, very late game, which he certainly made a name for himself with back with his, 2017 run at BlizzCon, as well as just the amount of times him and Scarlet faced off against each other and had like 40-minute games. So we know that he's also pretty strong in the late game. So this is kind of a, I don't know, it's kind of like seeing maybe Showtime and here, Marine. You know, you're like, oh, it's the two macro representatives of the race facing each other. It's kind of the feeling I get from here. Not to say that either person can and never will go for some earlier attacks, so that definitely will happen, probably in this best of 3. Just wouldn't be so well known for it. Overlord speed is on the way. Neeb's going to be maybe looking for a bit of a push out. I think it's a fake, though. Without the Warp Prism involved, I'd say that's almost assuredly a fake. And then also the Twilight Council and the Forge were fairly delayed. So, ooh, big supply block there. Wasted Chrono as well. Neeb a little bit off in that macro. So the Twilight Council and Forge being pushed off means that he actually has already... Well, he was supposed to have a 3rd Immortal pretty much like being pumped out. Oh, 4th Immortal, my bad. Wait. There you are. I was like, I'm missing something. There he is. Anyways, he has a 3rd Immortal pumped out instead of maybe like 2 Immortals and a Warp Prism. But the Warp Prism, I thought, would still be pumped out here. This doesn't feel like that much faster of an attack, but I assume I'm missing something. That faster of an attack, I'm talking about the +1 in charge being done as well. And if it's faster, I don't know if it's quite worth it without that Warp Prism. It's a little bit scary. It's very, very scary, in fact. The force fields do their jobs, and that's kind of a lot of what the earlier attacks of Protoss usually based around, right? They have the idea that, like, well, if I am going to be overwhelmed, if they actually cut drones, then I got force fields to back away and a recall to use in an emergency. But, I don't know, I feel like I've mentioned that, like, 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 different games would be like, well, you see, the force fields will kind of protect him in case there is something going a little bit awry, and then I proceed to watch the Protoss get totally enveloped and die, so... Anyways, that was a little more ideal in terms of, I guess, the process of the attack. Denver was building up an army, but it wasn't quite ready yet. Neeb had just enough force fields and the ability to run away. But, yeah. Charge and +1 only finishing just now as the 4th base is taken at 8 minutes. More Immortals on the way. Storm as well. Denver is going for a classic Ling Baneling Ravager attack. Maybe we'll see Lurkers later on. Like, much later. But first we might see a good old-fashioned macro, maxed out Ling Baneling Ravager attack. And with the upgrades all finished for Denver, +1 Baneling speed, Roach speed, it looks like he is about to set up for that maxed attack I was talking about. +2 does start up, making those Banelings even more effective in multiple scenarios. Neeb is trying to get a little bit of ahead of the attack. You know, maybe a storm, juicy storm there, and Denver's not paying attention, but I'm looking at the amount of force fields that are available. We're talking about literally just 1 sentry, not a whole lot of Archons, literally just the 1 now being morphed in. I mean, the Immortals are chonky, but they don't have that splash, you know? If you're not talking about a very large army, and not a lot of force fields, you're gonna have to hope that the storms hit, which, you know, storms don't actually get that instant kill on the Baneling, so that can be, like, a little bit sketchy to depend on. And you're talking about the Archons hopefully soaking up some of that damage, and then also popping Banelings. As well with their splash, but Neeb actually feeling very confident. He guarded against the Baneling run by to the left side, maybe seeing it or just anticipating it, and is actually moving through the middle. I don't know about this. He seems awfully bold. The charge is going off to the right to try and get some damage done, but it's not a whole lot. And Neeb, I guess, he was maybe willing to push a little bit deeper if the charge lots were a little bit more of a nuisance. Does pull back. I am just constantly scared for this army. I actually cannot believe Protoss players who do this, honestly. Like, I mean, I'm scared a lot because my own personal experience and how disastrous my engagements go. Sure, yeah, that does affect me, but I'm talking about just like watching pros that even with their skill and their reaction speed and, you know, they don't flub up their micro, I'm still like, ooh, Storm's just not as dependable as you would hope against the Banelings, and there are so fucking many of them, honestly. Like, they're being microed a little bit here and there. Denver doesn't want to just lose all of them to 2 Storms as he goes through the choke. So he tries to get the High Templars, but mostly just pops the shields of the Immortals, and he is going to back away. So far, an okay start to the fight, but I'm still going to be terrified. These High Templars alive for now. We'll see what happens later on. A couple of stasis traps are put down, so a couple of like weird lagging Banelings. Neeb is already onto a mothership. He got the Stargate from the beginning. He had a fleet beacon while he was macroing up, and he's already going to have something to help out against these multi-pronged attacks, perhaps. I mean, a mothership over the 3rd Nexus suddenly makes those Banelings kind of go, what? Hey, what am I looking at? I don't know. But obviously, over the army could be ideal as well. There aren't enough Overseers brought forward. Denver is not really adding on much else beyond this, just more Banelings. And as Neeb gets to a bigger army supply, with potentially even talking about carriers here, this is going to be a problem, but catching a lot of Banelings being made, forced to use so many Storms on the right side, we'll still have to deal with the army on the left. A couple of last-minute Storms do damage a lot of the army, but the Banelings connect, the Roaches jump on top of those Immortals, the Archon probably not going to be very much of a help. The Void Ray, I mean, that should be alive forever. Oh my god, usually it would be. Some heavy damage taken by Corrosive Biles, but thank God for the shield battery, and Neeb does hold strong at 160. He also deflected a couple of Baneling attacks off the left side. Lots of static defense. I think there was an Archon over there as well. I think the Banelings actually collided in and were over here, in fact. So they went on quite a journey. Warp Prism has been idling to the left side its entire time, so that's also been Denver missing out on maybe 16 army supply, 20 army supply, whereas Neeb is only with a Warp Prism, not even with like 4 Zealots in it. So that's actually a pretty good, let's say, trade over to the left side. Denver has not broken Neeb at one of the weaker points of Neeb's defenses when he was down to 140 supply. I don't know how he's going to break Neeb when he's at 170 supply, about to be up to carriers, and with so much stacked defense on either side of the map. A fit base also on the way for Neeb. Denver's going to try and bust through the left side, and Neeb is not even really responding too quickly, thinking maybe he can take care of it, or maybe Denver wouldn't actually commit. And now is going to respond. Oh, maybe he was waiting for the mama. Maybe it was. The Banelings maybe could just guess at where the Banelings are. The probes are, sorry. If they are cloaked, but only 7 of them going down, it's not too bad. Neeb is on 5 Nexus. Almost to it anyways. Denver does have a Hive, but not much else. We don't have any Vipers quite yet. The Spire's only just being thrown down. Lots of upgrades, including Burrow on the way, and that could be pretty cool, but that lack of Spire is concerning, and even if you got Vipers, then what are you abducting them into? Corrosive Biles? Maybe. They're really good. So far, Neeb has done an excellent job getting to this point, getting to the late game. A couple of Archons, a couple of Storms, and a couple of shield batteries take care of a large Ling Flood, even surviving one of those Archons. Actually, Denver just realizes he's not going to be able to play into the late game as effectively. Just taps out. Neeb. Just a strong defense. Defend, 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 defend. Wow, Shadone versus Clem? Oh, okay. Man, that's the second time I've done it. Strange is up against Clem first, and then now Shadone is up against Clem, but I keep on just, like, seeing them. Both Protoss is the same person. submarine. From a fairly large map of PvZ Gold to the smallest map, and one that just is very hesitant to be played on. If it's a TVZ, Zergs don't seem to really want to pick it. But then Terrans can also be kind of scared, because if it gets out of control, it gets out of control quick. And then for PvZ, Protosses usually don't want to pick it, but actually making its way through the vetoes here. Interesting. In the bottom rights, it is Neeb. Going for that strong defense, macro game you would know him for. In the top left, it is Denver. Getting to a situation he would usually enjoy. Not really being harassed very much in the early game and getting to 67 drones before anything actually really happened. Just a little bit of an immortal poke on the left side. But unable to utilize that to break Neeb later on. Denver not even going to try and go for a hatch first here, which kind of makes sense. With Submarine being like a 5-second faster rush distance or something along those lines, it is considerably harder to get that hatchery down. I think a pylon block will always do it, even without the earlier... Ooh, okay, there's a drone on the way there. Even without the delay in the probe that you can do as well from the longer maps. Anyways, the proxy hatch coming down, Denver not just anticipating, being like, okay, I know what's going to happen here, but also wanting to do something to Neeb. Is certainly going to mess up Neeb's build, and we'll see what else he can do beyond that. Zealot being chronoed out, pylon placed, as you do need that supply. As well as maybe a backup pylon in case the Lings do get us around here. Another Zealot's going to be immediately made as well. You'll see Protoss is sometimes like, and ha about getting that second Zealot. But, you know, because they want to get an Adept, which the Cybernetics core is going to finish, but it is pretty much worth getting the second Zealot. So one takes care of the hatchery, one can wall off. If it doesn't want to wall off, then the probe can do it with the pylon. If it doesn't want to wall off, it's actually not that big of a deal in general, I guess. With 6 Lings, they wouldn't really be able to tackle too much. Just get an annoying scout in the main base and run away from your Zealots all day. It is better not to let them in, though, because the Adept doesn't want to spend time chasing down Lings in the main. Would love to go for scouting beyond this. Missing the micro there on the Zealot. Pulled it back a little bit too late. The Adept also wasn't quite in range towards the beginning. So the Zealot's going to go down, and, well, only 3 Lings left. It's not too big of a deal. Broodlings are going to try and do something, but, ooh, nice little Zealot pocket there between the 2 pylons. I like it. They also tried to help out with the Adept. That's not going to work out very well either. And, well, Neeb still gonna have to deal with Lings at his main base, even at the end of the day, because the hatchery actually got up, it produced larva, larva produces Lings, Lings get into the main. Nice Zealot on patrol, it looks like, as the Adepts deal with the natural Lings, the ones that just popped out, so, I mean, actually a pretty stellar defense, aside from the Zealot being mismicroed. I guess this is kind of the perfect defense, if you're dealing with proxy hatches in your league, and you're like, I don't know what decisions to make, I always feel like I'm waffling, I'd say do this. I mean, even if it ends up being the incorrect decision for whatever reason, right? Like, a strong, fast decision in Starcraft 2 is always better than the, oh, I don't know, I guess I'll do this thing, slow decision. And both Adepts going into the main, clearly are going to force some Lings in response, so you always want to at least do this. He's going to try and use the lack of creeps off to the right side to take care of some of the Lings, maybe force more, actually, if it was that good, but... Ooh, it barely saves both Adepts. The truth is, there's actually a decent amount of creeps in the main. Denver means, I guess, used to that attack. It actually started to spread creep a little bit more to the right than you usually would. And even continuing to spread it into the main base. Adepts do go right to the 3rd hatch. They're going to try and take advantage of the slow Lings as long as possible. But that is about to go to speed. Pretty quick response from Neeb, but they're so injured from their kind of weak attack in the main. They're not going to live for very long. Oh, he tried to save it, and he almost did, but damn, not quite. Another Adept is back home holding the wall with a shield battery that was probably barely in range. We got 1 Void Ray out with a second one on the way, so that would have just checked to see if there's an Overlord there. There is not. So the surprise 3 Void Rays, sorry, 1 is already out. The surprise 3 Void Rays is something I was actually talking about last game. Now, it's no longer a surprise. I think if you see 2, I feel like you should expect 3, and you should also be very careful and scout if it's going to be more than that, if they're playing a cheeky mass air style. So this could just mean a couple extra queens more than Denver would usually get, right? Void Rays are not the biggest deal unless you just don't know they're on the way. But as soon as you realize what's happening, it's not too big of a deal. Grabbing a gas geyser wouldn't be that small, actually. It's actually very annoying for Denver. So he's gonna be able to save that, push 2 of the Void Rays back. Third Void Ray is still being made. Just takes a little while. Fourth Void Ray. Ah, so he is gonna go into the Void Ray style. Well, I did not think the Void Ray was gonna get that third, but oh, it might just happen. It might just happen, or it might not. It might not. Just kidding. Enough transfuses to barely hold on, and the Void Ray is not being microed. Loses him the red one, but ooh. Yeah, I didn't think that would happen. I thought the queens would take care of it, but because they had to go all the way from the main to the third, even with the creep spread Denver has, it was a little bit trickier than I thought. Okay, well, wipe your sweat off your brow. You're good. Maybe another transfuse just to be safe. This Ling is gonna see yet another Void Ray kind of pass by it. 2 more Void Rays? Void Rays. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's maybe a little bit scary. And it's still only a total of 4. You know, would have been 5, but Denver is, I think, even taking advantage of this information to go for an attack. Was he planning on going for a mid-game attack, a layerless attack on Submarine from the get-go? Possibly. But I think doing this on Submarine actually makes a lot of sense with what he's seen. So the Queens march forward with creeps that are already to the middle of the map, and then the Ling, Roach, Ravager flood beyond. It's going to be difficult to hold unless these Void Rays can actually survive. So far, I like the response of Neeb. He's going to try and tackle any units that come forward. He's going to try and use his shield battery for as long as possible. But without the time to build more shield batteries, I do believe he's going to have to give up this third Nexus. One Queen not quite falling. She has a transfuse. That was a nice pick-off. Rest them a little low. I guess wasting, kind of wasting them, I guess you could argue, on that third hatch. Might not have been ideal. But that shield battery's gone. Neeb has already pulled the probes from the main, sorry, from the third base into his natural. And in the main, we had a couple of Lings, I guess, being dropped off, or... there's no layers, so they just ran on through. That was a bit awkward. Third Nexus is going to go down. Neeb was, I think, very aware that was going to happen. His Robo's been popping out Immortals, so he's got 2 of them. A couple of Force Fields also looking to do some damage, but one Void Ray goes down. Ling's on top of the Sentries, on top of the Immortals, means their shields are going to be popped. And while there's 2 shield batteries and 1 is overcharged, this could be difficult to hold. Curse of Bile trying to go for the Void Rays, it looks like. Actually just hit the Time X course, so not too good of a use there. Another Void Ray pops out. That's going to be the end of the overcharge very, very soon. And more Queens are here trying to transfuse each other. And there's quite a lot of transfuses at this point. It's transfuses versus shield batteries. Which one's going to win? Needs to dedicate to even more shield batteries. I mean, Denver doesn't have a lot of flexibility with this push, right? He can't jump on top of units given the chance. A definite downside of any Queen-based push. You know, they do, to an extent, take care of the air army, the Banshees and the Void Rays, whatever matchup you're in, or even the Midas, right? But they can't really, you know, if there's an opening, they can't hurry. They slow places, and it's not going to be a good enough attack to actually kill Neeb. It gets a third Nexus, but let's not forget that Denver lost his third hatch. It only just finishes. This is only in a typical situation for the Zerg player. It's not even an ideal situation. Without a Nidus Worm, these Queens cannot get back home to save the second hatchery, and that Spore Crawler gets instantly bopped. Second Spore Crawler nowhere near complete, not for this hatchery to survive. The hatchery goes down. The Spore Crawler could follow, or not. Just move on. Move on. I mean, Prismatic Alignment's not going to help anymore, so this one Spore Crawler is going to be a bit of a bother, and the Queens are finally here. Queens have arrived. One Void Ray. One Void Ray does go down on the tail end, but they are not going to be able to grab anything in the main base. Still, grabbing that third hatch again, that is pretty devastating. Denver did leave a lot of his units, ground units, or actual fighting units. That's what we'll say. Actual fighting units back here to try and stall out this push, but Neeb has quite a few gateway units, as well as +1. That just finished up. His robotics bay also finished up too, so while he gave up a third Nexus, that takes a long time to rebuild. He had killed his opponent's third, which is more devastating for the Zerg, and killed it again. And then also had a growing army, a growing technology, where Denver, he was kind of locked in on the units that we see. So even though he got his lair behind this, I mean, there's not really much else going here for Denver. He's grabbing a couple of these Void Rays as they leave a little bit too late, but I'm not sure Neeb's going to care very much about his Void Rays. pylon snags. Now these things are depowered. These stalkers do not have blink, so as they reach forward, even with the force fields helping, they are going to get killed. A Colossus is helping a lot versus the Lings, and even targeting a couple down those Ravagers as well, but does not have range, and it doesn't actually kill many of these units that quickly, especially with the Queens and the Transfuses. So this is going to be the second all-in, the last all-in we see from Denver, the real all-in. The real, if this doesn't work, it's game over. Third Nexus is up, 2 shield batteries are here, Void Rays come back to help, a couple of Corrosive Bows actually hitting the heart of the army, taking care of a couple of the Sentries and a couple of those Stalkers. And the Queens have still a lot of transfuses. They can't quite reach the Colossus, and the Colossus is about to have 1 extra range and a buddy to back it up. Second Colossus comes forward to help out. That's a large concave of Zerg units, but I think the numbers are just too good for Neeb. GG. Neeb 2-0. Handling the funny, wonky submarine game with class, with style.